Okay. Can people in, thank you, maybe I'm wrong. Probably am wrong. Can folks in the Zoom hear us okay? Can somebody hear us in the Zoom? Can they respond to us, please, just so before we move ahead?
Yes.
Thank you, Lisa.
Oh, you're
Appreciate
welcome.
you.
Yes,
Okay.
we can.
Hey, okay. If you want to speak and you're in the Zoom, please send your name and the address you want to talk about to the tile that says send request to speak here. That we'll have a record of who you are and what item you want to talk about. Okay. We appreciate that.
Can you give us some guidance on how we submit that request?
There should be a chat function. You see a chat feature in there? It says chat, and you can send your name and the address you want to speak on to the tile that says send request to speak here.
Thank you for that direction.
Appreciate it. No worries. We're going to start with 2335 Albion Place at Lafayette Square. My name is Bob Bettis with staff. I'll tell the truth. I need to enter in ordinances 64689 as amended by 64923 and Lafayette Square's ordinance 70926. My presentation in the staff report. We have for you appeal of a step denial to retain a set of metal handrails on the second floor front porch at the property in front of you. Can you guys see okay? Is it a little washed out? You'll see okay? All right. Okay. The property in front of you, they did some porch work without building permits. We did receive a complaint. The majority of the work that was done complies with Lafayette Square's ordinance. The one thing that did not comply was that staff believes is the second floor metal porch you see. So this is the property in question in its current condition. Location for you really quick, just to the east of Jefferson. This is some street level context looking east and west before the changes. As you can see at left, there actually was no handrail at all up there on the porch. So this is a before and after shot of the installed handrail system. We're going to call it decorative metal cresting in the ordinance itself. The applicant used the Lafayette Square, the Lafayette Park fence as its historic model example. So you can see there are elements of the porch, like I love the battle axe. That's dead center on the porch. That does appear also on the fence as well as kind of the staggered posts. And here's a detail of the handrail itself. Very decorative. We had a similar situation come up last year over on Kennett, where a homeowner wanted to use the fence as a historic model example for a handrail. Staff does not believe that a fence should be an appropriate model example for handrails, elements in the house like this. So we're staying consistent in saying we do not believe that this meets the standards for an appropriate historic model example. You did get a letter from us today. Lafayette Square Review Committee is in support of staff's denial of the application. And given that fact that we believe that the design of the fence is not appropriate based on the historic example, we recommend that the board uphold the denial of the application. Any questions? It was sent to you earlier. We can actually enter it in again, or how do you prefer to do it? You have a copy up there, so I'll enter into the evidence the letter from Lafayette Square in regards to 2335 Albion. Thank you. The applicant is here. Proceeded the last time you gave us this example? You granted the applicant approval. And it was a lot less decorative. It was a lot less decorative. This was a lot more ornate than what was done previously. I didn't include a picture of what was done before, but if you look at the photograph up here on your upper left, that handrail system kind of looked like that. It had a staggered kind of a detail to it, and the post was a little more decorative than you would see usually for a handrail system on a front step.
Wait, even though we were against it, for Kennett, we agreed that they could do it.
You gave Kennett a variance for that design, yes. Yeah, we're just staying consistent with we're staying consistent with what we believe, and that is an appropriate model example. They did. That's what I just mentioned. They support staff's denial.
Oh, I know on this.
Oh, no, oh, they actually did support that one.
What was the difference?
There's about this scale. It's in the letter, you see. It discusses the scale of the installation as well as it being a little more ornate than.
You approved before. It's like that top right one, and they were putting it as like. So we were like, well, it deviates from what the code says, but it does look just like that, so.
And it was simpler, yeah.
That's what you're saying.
Let's hear from you. Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Was that one? After the fact?
No, that one was not an after the fact. That is a distinction here. It's the one in Kennett was not an after the fact approval. It was done before it was installed.
Hi, I'm Houston Smith. I'm the owner of the building.
Is your testimony going to be the truth?
It is.
Okay. You don't say you want to-
So the question is HME. All right, so the issue with HMEs for elements is that within Lafayette Square, if you're looking for ironwork that is from prior to 1898, you're not going to find much at all. And so coming up with what an appropriate HME for a railing like this is very difficult. So I looked around to what I knew to be original ironwork within the neighborhood, and I found the fence as being one of the only examples. There are a couple of Second Empire homes that have some very delicate ironwork, but I don't know if that's original or not. So to use that as a model example didn't make any sense. Also, this is not a Second Empire house. This is a German Baroque house, and so it's a different style. So at this point, struggling to find an HME that I could use was a problem. Now, I was the development chair for Lafayette Square when most of these standards were revised. And that was with Betsy Bradley and Jan Cameron that time. So when writing an HME statement, I probably co-authored that. So I knew what was the intent was for that HME. And so what the standards say is that if you're going to do a new element, recreate an element, you don't have to do replica, but you can take a cohesive combination of elements from a single element like the fence and then create something that would fit the house. Now, when I went to development or preservation, whatever they're called, preservation in the neighborhood, one of the questions was, what's too big? And I was confused by that because code requires it to be at least 36 inches tall, and the top rail is 36 inches. And so I was following code, and that's why it's so big. And then in the letter that was presented to me at noon today from the neighborhood, they said, we just should have used the garden fence as your example, or just duplicate that, and then we would have been okay with it. But the garden fence is late 20th century. And so how can you say that that's a model example? So it was confusing. And then one of the members, when I met at the meeting, when they said, well, it's just too big. And the question is, well, why didn't you just put some cresting up there? I'm thinking, well, how inappropriate is doing something that I know is wrong, because this is a walkout porch and it showed where the railing was attached to the wall. Why would I put cresting up there? It was 18 inches. It wouldn't meet code. And so that at that point I said, okay, well, you know, I'm doing a railing because that's what was there before. I don't have a picture of the house from 1888, so I don't know what was there before. So I did the best that I could, coming up with a genuine model example of the period, of the style, and this is what I created. No, any questions of me?
Yes, so I understand the confusion with the model example and all of that, but how come you didn't get a permit?
I could spend 30 minutes on that, but I'm not going to. It was just a matter of hubris and poor choice. And along with that, the fact that since I had been instrumental in doing revisions or co-writing the revisions, I thought I knew what the intent of the standards were. And I didn't really think that I needed to have the neighborhood come to me and say, we're going to interpret the standards you wrote to you. So, and the letter and the, the cresting and, all that kind of stuff, I was kind of ambivalent about what I was going to get from the neighborhood. Now, as far as, so yes, hubris.
Is there anybody in the waiting room?
See, check mine to make sure. Sorry, excuse me. They're saying it's difficult to hear the board, by the way, so if you could, I'd appreciate it. Not that close, Commissioner Richardson. Lisa, we saw your comment. We will try to have the board speak louder. Nothing else in there.
The record, I know the presence of Commissioner Robinson. Okay, commissioners, that concludes the testimony in this appeal. Commissioner Howell. You got a motion?
My motion is the preservation board overturn the cultural resources office denial and to install a decorative black metal handrail on the second floor of the court.
Is there a second? Second. Made and seconded. Any discussion?
Should I say why?
It's where we have that little crosswalk thing. That's so
Yeah.
helpful.
So I don't know, I haven't looked into my notes, but he said the height is appropriate, and the neighborhood said it's not appropriate, so it's an appropriate height, and they just, and he's used, he went around and tried to find something that was similar, which is fencing, and if we approve this, the Pinnett property, and found it reasonable, I don't see why we don't approve this property. To me, that doesn't look bad. I think it looks great. I understand the neighborhood's concern for it's not 100% historically appropriate, but I think we have to make some variations since we're in 2024. It's not going to be the easiest thing to potentially find something that's going to match. As you said, he didn't go.
I bet you did not go to the neighborhood blacksmith though.
I'm also like fine with his modification because I think he did a good job and did research and thought about it, but I got a building permit for my work in Lafayette Square, so I paid the money for it. I went through the process. I don't know, we do have a system for a reason, so.
So I think that you get here to us.
After the fact, he just, so now we're just judging on particular that hours.
Thank you again for catching my ear. Let's try this again. We lost signal. Can somebody in the room verify they can hear us okay?
We can hear you now.
Okay, yeah, we lost connection for some reason, so I apologize. So, okay.
For the record, what we just did, we voted 5-0 with one extension to approve the estimate.
Tag team it here. So smooth. This is going great. And again, can the folks in the Zoom room verify they can see the PowerPoint? Okay. Just making sure. You know what? Any.
Yeah, can see it good.
And hear you.
You get, okay, yay. Okay. All right. Bob Bettis with staff. I will tell the truth. I need to enter in ordinances 64689 as amended by 64923, the Lafayette Square Ordinance 70926, my presentation, staff report, and also a letter from Lafayette Square in regards to this project. Okay. Sorry, okay. We have before you is a garage modification at 1425 Dolman Street. The garage in its current condition is on the left side of your screen, or my screen, but on your right side. The house is on the right. As you can see, the work for this one began also without permits being approved. This calls for adding a flounder half story to the existing garage. Here's context for you. We're just to the west of Truman and Southern Park. Here's the existing site plan, so you see what's going on. There's a wide side yard to the south, so there's a line of sight back to the garage from Dolman, especially during winter months. This is the condition of the garage before the work started. Here's some street level context. You can see, I know it's hard to see, but trust me, it's back there on the left-hand side. You can see this little spot. That is the garage in question. This is the garage elevation that faces the house. We're going to call this a carriage house because when you make it larger than 2 cars, it becomes a carriage house. We're calling it a carriage house per the ordinance. The rules for garages are kind of a little not strong enough to really give us any way to review the project. So we're going to call it a carriage house to be larger than a 2-car garage. And since a carriage house, the side that faces the house becomes its primary facade. So this is the current condition. This is the side that faces the house before the work started. This is the proposal left. It'll be a flounder, again, a flounder addition. The side that faces the house will have a row of casement or kind of, casement windows, as well as a wooden screen. Also extend the parapets up the sides, as well as the old fireplace will run up the middle. This is a picture of the salvage windows. They'll be used for the windows that face the house. These are the 2 side elevations. You can see it's going to create a flounder shaped roof. The south elevation, which will be a little more visible, has kind of this wooden screen portion at the peak. The other north side will be all brick. As proposed and sent to us, the roof was going to be a standing seam, which does not comply with the ordinance, but the applicant has agreed to do a compliant material, which I just learned before the meeting started. So in your report, it does mention the roofing not complying, but he's willing to make that change. So going through the ordinance, it's the carriage house. We have determined that this facade is the primary facade and should be based on a historic model example for the fenestration, which does not comply. So that's one aspect of it. Sorry. Okay, so again, on this facade, you'll have a row of these casement windows. And then above it will be a wooden screen. And then you have the brick from the fireplace and as well as the parapet. So row of windows, kind of a wooden screen, and then brick on the sides. It's a little different design. So looking again for some kind of back to the historic model example requirements of the Lafayette Square Ordinance, you really don't have anything for this kind of massing, this kind of design. So we feel that in general, it does not comply with the ordinance for its fenestration and making it a flounder essentially. You're not going to find a carriage house that has that kind of form to it, that flounder kind of shape to it. So those are the two main aspects that do not comply with the ordinance. And also it started work without permits, which was a bit of a problem. We didn't have time to really work at in terms of, kind of making the design look a little bit more appropriate. But you have a letter from Lafayette Square. They are in support of the project. They noted that the roofing change, and they are going to change the material for roofing. Missing anything else? Yeah, that's the main things are, again, it's the odd massing, making this flounder shaped carriage house, and the fenestration on the side face of the house. So staff recommends that the board uphold staff's denial of the application.
There's questions for staff.
Did you say the neighborhood is okay with that?
The letter states that their neighborhood's okay with it.
So
Yes,
the committee has mixed views, but the majority supports the project.
I guess, yeah, I'm confused if there's like 3 or 4 different things that are off of this property versus the other property. I guess that's my opinion. But, why they are okay, are they not looking at this as a carriage house? Or they just-
no, there's the Lafayette Square Code, it's like a choose your own adventure book sometimes. There's so many ways you can go to how to figure out how to read the code. Trying to first figure out, is it a historic building? Without anything else, otherwise we're going to call it a historic building. And no matter what you do, you kind of get back to all the code applies to the building essentially. You have to pick a primary facade to figure out what it's going to be based on a model example. So the best way for staff to do a review, we're going to call it a carriage house. And they were okay with that too, Lafayette Square. We kind of actually discussed it with Marcia Delcourt, who is the current chair, and she was like, that's one way to do it. So
What if it was labeled the garage?
the garage rules are relatively unhelpful. Let's put it that way. If it was, yeah,
So, based on what you had said before, it becomes a carriage house when it's larger than the 2 cars. So
Yes.
Currently, it's a garage.
Right.
If they do this, it'll become a carriage house.
right. That's how we're applying the code. Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. I'm just making sure that.
Yeah. If you call it an alley house, it'd be the same thing. We got to pick a primary facade, and it's usually the more ornate facade. And in this case, obviously, it's the one's going to face the house. And that's okay for both alley houses and carriage houses. So it kind of gives me direction either way. If this were a completely new structure, they could maybe even do something like this. But having to shoehorn what is historic and how to define it, this is the best way we can do it.
Further questions?
Wait, so for this, if he was allowed to tear this down. What do you want?
If it'd be easier to do with the code, put it that way. Let's put it that way. It'd be simpler to actually have direction. Yeah.
So, hold on though, if this was torn, if this burned down and then the site was clear, and then he came to you with that drawing saying, I want to build that carriage house. We still call it a carriage house because it's not a garage. It has the 2 stories, whatever we're putting upstairs, it would not follow the code.
Potentially. I mean, maybe it's speaking a little too off the cuff, but how you define accessory structures in that code is a lot less strict than something like this. Let's say they're gonna do just like a building back there with like kind of this configuration, that could probably be approved. But since it's a garage, again, I'm speaking a little bit off the cuff, but there, I could actually review that easier than this, is my point.
No, I think I'm confused. because
Yeah,
we
get
have
in
all
line,
these
yeah,
codes
so are
that
we.
everyone wants to stick to, but the neighborhood's like, oh, but this one's okay, and it's completely against the code, so
Yeah, I had bad fish at lunch.
Anything else for the record?
I bet that's it.
Let's hear from the attorney.
Can I pass these exhibits out to you? Just one more drawing.
First of all, tell us who you are
My name is Tom Cohen.
and is your testimony or you make it true?
Yes.
Bring your exhibits over here so that. Right. They're all the same. That's a view from the side of it. What we're talking about. So first of all, I started work. I fully intended to get a permit, and I started working on it. And then I wasn't ever flagged for building something without a permit. So I went in to apply because I got a little carried away with a mason. So I went in and applied for a permit, and that's why I'm here right now. Not that I would have never tried to build something like this without a permit, but I'm not saying that it's still my fault. So I don't deny my tardiness. But anyway, and the purpose of this second floor is a workshop for me. It's not a carriage house. There's no bathroom. It's just a space that I would do like a shop, like woodworking. That's what I propose to do. And I don't plan to rent it. It's just me using it. The space that faces the house is made up of windows that I salvaged from another house that I owned a long time ago. And I changed all the windows and kept these casement windows. And so I don't know that I can give you any more information, but as we continue discussing it, I can add whatever you need, whatever questions you have. But on the first floor, it's still a 2-car garage. And then the third bay is actually storage that was built that way. So you can't really park a third car. It's just wide enough for a third car, but accessibility is just for a 2-car garage. And I wanted to clear that up. I didn't know if that was pertinent or not. So that's. Am I correct that the key element of your testimony is that this is not a carriage house?
It's not a livable space for rent. Yes, correct. It's not a carriage house. It's just a shop. And there'll be like a table saw and a drawing table. That's it. I'm an architect, so, but I don't really practice that much anymore.
I've seen
Yeah, for like 45 years.
Are you gonna run water to it?
There might be a sink, but no, there's not going to be a bathroom.
Are you gonna get a plumbing permit for that?
Yes, ma'am.
Permit things.
questions for you about it.
Okay. Do you have any other? Here, you guys go. Please look at that.
Is there anybody in the waiting room?
That's it.
Somebody just says they like the city to approve this project, so that's not an official statement, so.
The what?
Somebody says they like, yeah. But, beyond that, no.
Want to make a motion?
You wanna-
We just can't stop.
I can't stop on fire. my motion is that the preservation overturn cultural resources office denial. Allow Mr. Cohen to build the garage addition. Because the neighborhood supports it and there seems to, and it's not a carriage house. In my mind, it's an oversized garage.
I would also, I'd ask if you to add the caveat that they use the materials that the neighbor, that they use asphalt shingles. Second. Yeah. Not.
Is that gonna be a problem? So,
You need to not have
to not have a
any
city?
water.
Yeah. Just have to bring a bucket up there.
You really. Um,
Otherwise,
already
you're saying
have-
it's gonna go down a spiraling.
You might already have water.
Yeah, there, actually, there's a hose bill, so
Yeah,
there's
that's what I
plumbing.
Oh, there you go.
It's on the, actually, it's in the inside where you see that opening that you walk through, the tall one?
Yeah.
And those are two storage places. There's a hose bib in one of them.
I don't wanna add anything about water tonight.
We'll need to meet building code. I assure you, they've applied for building permits and we'll need to meet building code, so. Hopefully that will. Yeah.
Commissioner Hamilton, you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton, you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Ryan, you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson, you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson, you vote yes or no? Chair also abstains. There are 4 yeses, 2 abstentions.
Just want to note, Mr. England, the motion passed, so your statement is noted, Mr. England. I just want to make a quick note before I go to the next item. I've seen a lot of people jump on at the 4 o'clock mark. If you're in the Zoom and you want to make any kind of a public statement or discuss a project, please send a chat to the send request to speak here tile. Just open the chat up and just give your name and the address you want to talk about. And then when that comes up, we will let you speak. Okay. Sorry. I'm trying. I'm really trying. Next up, another appeal. My name is Bob Bettis with staff. We'll tell the truth. Need to enter in ordinances 64689 as amended by 64923. And in the Soulard,
What project is this?
this is 3311 South 11th Street in Soulard. My presentation, the PowerPoint, and also you have a letter from the Soulard Restoration Committee in regards to this project as well, as part of the record. Okay, this is the property in question. It's on South 7th Street. We're kind of like just south of the brewery. The project entails to construct a 6-foot composite / vinyl fence and the side and rear yards of the property. Here's the location. As mentioned, we're just kind of south of the brewery. Here's some street level context. The property in question is over here to the left. And on the right, this is the property in question. Here's site plan showing the location of the garage. I'm sorry, of the fence. Sorry, I've got garage in the brain. And left is the approximate location of the proposed fence. And on the right, my right, is the actual fence that's being proposed. Soulard's ordinance says you can't do any kind of a plastic fence. And also you can't do panels. They say it should be boards placed vertically. We've had this kind of discussion in other neighborhoods. This is a panel system, and it's also a vinyl kind of fence. I looked up the product itself, and it does go and say that it's actually a vinyl equivalent on the website for the material. It's called Simtech. But it has a grain to it, but it is a PVC type material. So It does not comply with the ordinance in terms of material, and they're not individual boards. And that is how it might comply. So staff recommends that the board uphold the director's denial of the office's denial of the permit. And you have a letter from SRG. They are also not in support of the applicant's request for the fence. Yes, these are all.
Hello. Sorry, I'm the owner of 3311 South 11th Street. Jason Burkhart. Yes. Yes. So when I looked into this, first off, we had built this house 5 years ago. So this was a restoration of, or I'm sorry, it was a brand new house based on model example. So we've been living in it for quite a few years, but with COVID, we had to delay putting up a privacy fence. So very familiar with the codes, read through it for fencing material, and there was several items that it said for a fence is strictly prohibited. One being vinyl fencing, but there's no mention of composite wood material, which the code, the way I read it, was last updated in 1993. Guessing composite wood wasn't really around at that time, therefore it was not mentioned. At that point, I look back at the introduction section of the code regulations, and it says that if there is something that is substantially similar in form, function, and color, that material could be looked at in the future, with the code understanding that materials change over time, and there might be better, more durable products that come on the market that can still meet the aesthetical views of the area. When I first looked at this, I looked at the panel. Yes, I do understand that as a panel setup, I could go to a straight picket, but when I saw vertical panels, I understood that to be compliant at that time. So my understanding was that the primary issue was the composite versus white picket fencing. In communications with the Steelheart Restoration Group, he said he didn't really look at the merits of the similar in form and function. The response I got back in email was they didn't want to allow this as an opening to a white vinyl fence, which this is obviously what's being proposed is not a white vinyl fence. During those emails communications with the board member, I said I would have no issues with switching over if the issue is also the kind of like the panel style versus straight wood picket, that I would have no issue switching my request over to a wood picket with a dog ears, which would match the other fences in the neighborhood on the block. So I am looking for a request for a variance to have a dog picket composite wood fence for my house. I am looking to have it for, I think this composite wood is more durable than wood. It'll look better over the lifetime. I mean, my only alternative would be a wood fence. I'm just trying to look for something that's a little bit more durable.
You said somewhere in the code that something about material that's similar.
It said that if a new product comes on the market, any future building materials that is not specifically identified in the code, but meets similar form and function, then it could be proposed to the group as far as looking at and its future use. Now, for example, those columns that are on my post, which went through, and the facial board material and my corbels are all vinyl PVC material that got painted. So it's already been used at one point and was approved at one point. I don't understand. I was having a struggle of figuring out, okay, why is this the exception when obviously it's been approved at least at some point in my house, and then I see it used in other parts of the neighborhood for facial material, decking in both private and public use.
You've seen this material
I'm saying I've seen composite wood material.
on other houses.
Yes.
You're saying on other houses.
So why can't we do that? That's-
Yes, thank you, ma'am. And like I said, I was willing to, switch over to a dog ear picket to match the other surroundings too. I'm just trying to look for something that's more of a durable product over time. And still gets the wood grain and can match the wood color of the neighborhood or what's typical. No, thank you, sir.
For you. I do want to just clarify some really quick. Sorry, hold on here. From the website from this fence company, it says made it 100% recyclable polyethylene plastic. So they say it's composite wood. I think it's a matter of marketing for the product. It is 100% plastic. So yeah, let's make sure that's very clear. I get why they say composite, but it's plastic, 100%. It says on their website. Beyond that, no, certainly else.
Somebody got a motion?
You know what my motion is?
So is-
Okay.
I have a question. Oh, wait, I have no questions yet. Can I have a question for Bob?
Yes.
So is it of your professional opinion that that material that you just read from the website is vinyl?
Yes, I mean, it's akin to vinyl. I believe it's a similar enough that we can call it that with confidence.
But what does it say? What is it say? So where does the word
It says you cannot use vinyl. Sorry, what?
Where do the words composite come
It's
from?
marketing on the website for them. I mean, that's what it says. In his defense, it does say when you go to the website, it says composite fencing, but it's not a composite. It's not a combination of any kind of wood whatsoever. It's 100% plastic.
And it's your testimony or your opinion that Cultural Resources considers this whatever this is, plastic, as an equivalent material to vinyl?
Yes. We have no idea how this weathers, how it ages. Our experience with any kind of fence like this is that it will warp and it will discolor and it will look pretty rough. So we keep it consistent.
And so, we give a motion.
I don't yet.
We have a question. So you seen the product in person or you're just going based on the internet?
No, I saw it in art. I just happened to see it. That was the one that I think that I saw.
And you saw it in a magazine?
No, I saw it in the store.
Oh, you saw it in art.
That's where that came from.
Did it look plastic to you? Did it look like a positive?
I mean, does that look like a closet CD on the photo? I mean, it's a matter of opinion, in the way I look. Is it close enough? That's I thought it was. But
I've got a my motion is that the preservation board overturn the cultural resources office denial for the new fence. That's the motion. Okay, I guess I'm going based off the picture that, so by, it looks like composite, it's, EMI world is dealing with composite, maybe it's not, a classic mixed up composite, that was more of a composite finish to me. And I think something interesting, because initially going into this, I was like, oh, no. But then when he mentioned what the code said in terms of other materials over time could be acceptable, if it's similar, to me, it makes sense. So that's my point of view.
That if we were to overturn the denial on this, that we're gonna have a whole lot of folks from Soulard looking to install round vinyl fences in the future.
Entry level one fence.
If the vinyl is a form of
So I guess what was that, why is there hesitation for everyone to make a motion? What are your hesitations? I don't care either way. I just
Final
wonder
fences.
what,
Our investigation of final fences.
You're wondering what the hesitation.
No, what's
Other
that,
way.
what was the hesitation of upholding the closure? When you asked a few people about making a motion, they were like, I don't want to do it. So I just asked them the hesitation.
Well, I
Oh,
do
okay,
think
so-
the discussion has come up many times around like new products not being considered in many of our historic codes.
Yeah.
We've talked about it with the sustainability of windows, all kinds of things. So I thought that was worth considering in this moment. However, I am now convinced that the word vinyl and the word plastic are the same word in this situation. And so I have not yet been convinced that this is a new product on the market, but rather a different word for a product we already knew about and the neighborhood said they didn't want.
Yeah, so I was just wondering what that was.
That's exactly my second. Discuss based on what this was true.
We are at a juncture where I can call a vote on this motion or you can withdraw your motion.
No, I mean, they can all say no.
Commissioner Hammaker, do you vote yes or no?
No.
Commissioner Hamilton, do you vote yes or no? Yes. it is. What do you-
She abstained. She abstained.
I have mixed feelings.
Alderman Ryan,
No.
Commissioner Richardson?
Yeah.
Commissioner Robinson?
Yeah.
Chair also votes no. There are 5 noes, 1 abstention, the motion fails. Do I hear a second?
I move to uphold the Sierra denial fence as it does not comply with the CR display. Second.
I can file my second. Hearing none, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Hamilton, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton, do you vote yes or no? Alderman Ryan, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson, do you vote yes or no? Commissioner Robinson, do you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Chair abstains on this vote. There are 5 yeses, 1 abstention, and the motion carries. Okay. Okay. Okay.
This is 2906 Missouri Avenue in the Benton Park Local Historic District. My name is Andrea Gagan with Cultural Resources Office, and I swear to tell the truth. I'm entering into the record ordinance 64689 as amended by 64925. Ordinance 67175, the Benton Park Historic District Ordinance. A letter that we received from the Benton Park Neighborhood Association, the agenda, PowerPoint presentation, and the application. This is the building in question. And this is the location, close to the corner of Pestalozzi and Missouri. This is the gangway between the two buildings. The building on the left is 2906. And this is just a closer view of the gangway and the current side porch that's towards the rear of the building. So the application is to construct a deck that runs the width of the gangway between the two buildings. And then there would be a wide stair that comes down towards the front. The stair ends at the building, the front of the building next door. The with new appendages to semi-public and private facades, does not comply. The new deck, proposed deck would extend the width of the gangway between 2906 and 2910 Missouri. It would also extend to the front of the neighboring building. The resulting structure would be much larger than the current porch that is located at one of the side doors, and its design is not based on a model example. The proposed deck is not a reconstruction of an existing porch and is not based on model examples required by the Benton Park Historic District standards. The Benton Park Neighborhood Association is in support of the project. But the Cultural Resources Office recommends that the Preservation Board uphold the director's denial as the proposed deck does not comply with Benton Park Historic District standards. This is just the site plan showing the proposed deck. And this is this showing the wide stairs that will be visible from the street. There's some context along Missouri. And this is for the applicant. Questions? No, just the, I believe just the, no, it's not attached. I would assume they would have to get some sort of like written notarized letter from that. Well, they're apparently it's all of their property. It's it's probably the building next door is on the building line, so it's it's their gangway.
Hello, I'm Sean Dotson, the architect, the client and owner of the house, Charity Sire. Yes.
What do you want to do?
We would like to overturn the appeal and approve us to build that side deck. We would like to build the side deck. I'm not sure which way to go on that. Some notes. Charity has gotten an approved maintenance agreement with the property that we're next to, even though we're not touching that with the new construction. Other aspects to note is it is slightly recessed behind the building that it's adjacent to. It would be basically in alignment with the original stair that would be at the front door. It is formerly a two-family way in the past, so there's two side doors. The existing stair that you see before is just for the rear side door. You can see a little bit of the remnant for that front steps. The new one is much larger. It's wider. It's intended to be a lot more functional. You can actually set things up there. The other kind of benefit is that there's a lot of water intrusion into the basement. That existing brick paver patio is it's sloped poorly. A lot of water's coming in there. So the new deck is going to conceal a French drain, like a drainage system that'll be concealed underneath it. Let's see. Since we are doing a stair the full width, a guardrail is not needed. So while it'll be the same height from grade as the current one, it'll be a little less visible, in my opinion, because we won't even need a guardrail for it. Any questions we can answer?
It's been sent on to zoning already. I don't have it with me. It's been sent on to zoning.
Yeah, it's been
already.
submitted to the city.
You got the survey, this is your lead.
Yes, they're actually over mine slightly.
Oh, they're-
So,
they're-
Yeah.
Yeah.
By a few
Yeah.
inches.
Yeah. Yeah.
Questions?
Thank you very much.
Gotcha. Hold on. Nope, we're good.
That motion? Preservation Board overturn the director's denial of the application of the proposed deck and allow him to build the deck.
Perhaps it's not going to be visually dominant because it's recessed to the property. Right, or the building facade of the adjacent property.
And I would like to add that they meet the requirements and intent of Winter Park Historic District. Discussion.
I think that it is not visually dominant because the stair begins where the adjacent properties front facade is. Yes, so the like ghost line from the previous stair, I think it was compelling to me because you can see that that lines up to the adjacent property.
Commissioner Hamilton, you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton, you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Alderman Ryan, you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson, you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson, you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Chair abstains on this vote. There are 5 yeses, 1 abstention, and the appeal is upheld. Okay, Commissioners, we're going to take a 2-minute break, but really 2 minutes. Okay, while they reset.
So there's a lot of reasons. There's even probably record of that. They had to write it down every time.
You're welcome, Olivia, it's gone. I can do all kinds of stuff.
No, no.
Jamie.
This meeting is now back in order. Let's call the record. Agenda item A.
Hi, Bob Betts with staff. This is a prelim to construct a 16-unit building at 2344 South 18th Street. This is a elevation showing the proposed building. This is actually the east facade of the building. Some really quick background. I think it's important to see how we got here. This is like the fourth iteration of this design. The developer had met with the neighborhood first before we saw initial designs. We kind of discussed process with the applicant, try to kind of steer us all in the right way to kind of get something that's compliant with the ordinance. To get to this design before you today, the applicant met with myself and zoning in order to come up with a building this. Sorry, I can't talk. Zoning has seen the design, its placement, and is now okay with zoning. And we feel that this also meets our standards. So this is the final design we thought could actually come to you guys for review finally. So just a little background. Here's the location. It is actually 18th Street is the address, but there's no longer 18th Street. It is now down the hill towards 55. Barton is the only street facing public facade for the parcel. There was 5 before. They were all made into one parcel by the applicant a few months ago. So now it's a single parcel. It was 5 previously. Barton is your only public facade or street that exists. This is the proposed site plan. You'll notice that the building is slightly canted a little bit, so it's not aligning with Barton. The applicant has agreed to either pour the foundation on the south side so it aligns with the street and the property to the east, or they will rotate the building as needed to get the setback to align with the property to the east. So just so you know, it does show a little bit of a canter off the line here. This will come down and run parallel to the street, so it would meet the setback requirements. But it will be surrounded by parking and drive lanes on the site. So I will enter in off the end of the cul-de-sac, and then you'll go around, you park along the edges. But the building is set back about 20-ish feet off of the alley, and this main street-facing side will be the public facade. Some context really important, we're looking at here. The site is at left up here. It's a cul-de-sac kind of a situation. The street's been gone for some time. This is the site over here, looking south on Barton this way. This is the view on the upper right, is the view looking towards the interstate. The property in question is up here in the back. And this is a close-up shot of this, looking at the current condition of the site. And just for some context, the view at 55, it's like up in this area right here. it's helpful, fun for no one tell. Previous, historically on the site, it's from the old Sanborn map. It shows what was there before demolition and the Fun Interstate went into place. And this is the site now. So this is also good to show you here. There are other attached row houses in the adjacent area. You see to the south, there's a couple row houses that have kind of similar massing and scale as the proposed building. Okay, you need a model example for new construction. This is a now long since demolished building down at like Cherokee and 7th Street. But this is the basis for the long run of the east facade, which is semi-public per the ordinance, which requires a model example. This is the basis for that run. And see, it does not have to be replicated, it just be based upon. And so we felt this was pretty close for that model example for that facade. We had to turn the corner because you do have a street-facing facade, which is the Barton side. This is also a building that was demolished over at Teresa and Lindell many moons ago. This is the basis for the fenestration and also for the model example for the south-facing facade elevation. This is the side that faces the interstate. It will be a siding that meets the standards. And this is the north elevation, which will have a brick return like the interstate side. And again, we'll have some sort of compliant siding on that elevation. A couple of streetscapes for you. This is the Barton side. This is the proposed elevation for that. You see that it aligns with the only really adjacent building, which is contextually speaking, the property that faces 13th Street. So you can see height-wise, the site slopes down Barton pretty quickly towards 13th Street. So we feel that this kind of complies with that elevation in terms of its alignment with the neighboring properties. This is the alley streetscape. The owner of this property, Mr. Billy Tomber, is here. He was going to be speaking in a little bit, but this shows this elevation in context with the building here. There are concerns for the neighborhood in regards to the grading and if it's accurate as depicted here. The engineer is here along with the architect and the applicant to discuss any concerns regarding the grade of the site. The site as proposed right now does have a pretty good slope to, or a good hump to it, actually, as it kind of goes from south to north, and it kind of slopes back down towards the adjacent street. So it will need some grading to actually achieve this appearance, which we believe is appropriate. Some other context that I give you, which is what you're going to see. Again, it's the row of houses on 18th Street looking back towards the property. So you see we have a long run of properties similar to what is being proposed. And this is the site looking back towards these buildings. So you see it's obviously the site has gone through a lot of changes over the years. This is the alley looking north toward Mr. Tomber's property way down here. Just so I get a sense of what's going on there right now. Also, this is kind of taken from the property to the north, looking back. You can see this kind of does illustrate a little bit of the site conditions as we speak. You'll need to get some grading to get that achieved look for the neighboring properties. Whoa. And this is also in the alley. I want to give you some winter shots to kind of show you the visibility that could occur as time goes on. And this is Barton looking back up. From, as you can see, it's a pretty good slope up to the property itself. And you can see the scale of the buildings around it. Okay, so going through the ordinance, we believe that the proposal complies with majority of the aspects of the Soulard code. We believe that it has a proper model example. You've seen the two I've shown you. The site and the alignment with the south facade being poured or moved, it will align with the property to the south on 13th Street. The setback will also align with that property on 13th Street on the side. We believe the mass and the scale are also appropriate. Again, I mentioned that you have large scale townhouses nearby, so it's not inappropriate for that location. There are references nearby that are similar scale and mass. Proportionally, fenestration is good, especially along the alley side and on the Barton side. We think that my example shows that fenestration is appropriate for the portions of the windows. Material, they're gonna do red brick. So we'll make sure any final plans has a brick spec, and there will be either a stone or a poured concrete foundation to align with the ordinance as well. Private facade construction, it will be a siding of appropriate material. So based on what is spelled out in the ordinance, staff recommends preliminary approval of the project, subject to final designs, materials, usual stuff. It's gonna get there next, all right. You have a letter in your packet. The neighbor is not in support of the project. As you said, it's a very brief note. It talks about, I believe it says the historic appearance, appropriateness, the site, and it's left at site. And there's a third item, I apologize, but it is in the letter that you have.
Is anyone from the neighborhood association here to testify on it?
Well, there are some folk,
Several are on. Okay, then I guess when we get to them, they'll understand that more of the nature of their opposition.
But is it your testimony, because these are two contradictory things. You're saying it lines up with all the regulations, and they're saying, oh, wait, it doesn't. So is it your testimony?
it's something that it meets the ordinance.
that it meets the ordinance?
I appreciate it. I don't want to get into their argument because I'm sure they will do so soon. There's a sense that, you know, what is proposed often does not get built. And they're concerned that the site situation is not really being shown accurately. And so I think they're feeling beyond parking issues and whatever, they feel like the elevations, like the streetscape elevations are not necessarily accurate for the site. Again, I'm not gonna put words in their mouth, but that was my discussion with the member of the board, trying to figure out, you know, what their thoughts were on the project.
Are there guardrails to keep the plans in place for the most part? I know things come up, but.
Well, you know, to be fair to the neighborhood and everybody else that's had problems in the past where things don't get built that look like they're supposed to look like, we're gonna try and make sure that any submitted plans are as close as possible to what we've approved. I mean, short of us going out ourselves and measuring, you know, neighboring buildings, we can only do so much. We rely on the inspectors to keep these, you know, projects in line. So we're gonna do what we can to make sure what is before you is what is submitted and approved.
Right, and for the record, their letter said that they are opposed to the current plan. They don't say that we don't think it.
Right.
So staff is saying we think it follows the code, the letter says we don't like the plan.
Yeah.
They don't comment on the code.
Other questions? Other questions? The applicant has-
Leonard Adwin.
We may have questions.
Yes.
There's the site arrangement. So I understand it is a funky site and you know, there is no more roadway anymore on 18th. And so what is the frontage? Like, there's a question about that, right? Because there is really no frontage on this site. And people would probably not want to front the highway. I am trying to wrap my mind around the idea that my row house, which I live in a row house, they're the best kind of house. Why I would want to front an active alley. Why I would want dumpsters immediately in front of my home. I'm a little confused about what would lead you to arrange the building in that way.
Zone.
Just a quick point of order.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, do we need to swear him in?
No, this is a preliminary.
Okay, perfect. Pardon me.
So zoning has required that you orient the building in that way?
Yeah, so we started this process back in 2023. And originally what we came up with, the neighborhood was absolutely against, and I can kind of give you guys kind of progression of what was started.
Thank you.
So that's obviously what we started with. And we went to the neighborhood
we started working with cultural resources, and that was an absolute no-no. So about 3 months later, we kind of got a hold of the neighborhood, and we started discussions with them. And kind of cut the long story short, after several meetings with them, we came up with what the neighborhood, after discussion, what they call a group vote. So with the architect and the civil engineers, we kind of started just working up plans to see what would work. And it seemed like what I just put in front of you was what the neighborhood was going to gave us a go ahead to move forward with. Once we got that done, we submitted this to CRO and zoning. And the first thing zoning said was, you're not compliant. So they made us move the building back with the setbacks to make sure that we were in compliance with zoning. Once we got that taken care of, then obviously we went to CRO, and CRO said, you should have come to us first. Why did you go to the neighborhood? So we started working with CRO, picked out model examples, and they made it kind of compliant to where they would be able to support it. That's what we came up with. Then we went back to the neighborhood saying, we've gotten everything that you wanted us to do. Zoning has said, move it this way to make sure it's compliant. CRO said, this is what you need to do to make sure it's compliant. And this is what we came up with. And the neighborhood said, it's not compliant with what we want. So.
I don't understand. I guess I'm confused. Because CRO said, really check every single box.
Yeah.
And the neighborhood saying, well, to me, it's confusing, like what are the other ones? I just mentally can't understand this. Is there a reason, to your knowledge, why this is not complying? If it checks every box? I've heard the neighborhood doesn't like it. Why the neighborhood doesn't like it?
Yeah, so
Makes zero sense to me.
yeah, so the original site plan had the building closer to the alley.
Okay.
What you did was what we ended up with moved it away from the alley. They wanted the parking on the highway side.
Also, parking said.
Yeah. But to be in compliant, we had to move it back, and now the parking is on the alley side. Even though it's on the property, it's on the alley and the east side.
So you haven't gone to the board of adjustment or anything, you are complying with current zoning.
We are
You're not
compliant.
asking for any
We are compliant.
variances from that.
Yeah.
I don't understand what they
Now I have the architect and the civil engineer here as well, just in case you guys have any questions.
What we do. We have Lisa Aki and Steve Kotzine. I'm sorry if it's name it correctly, in the Zoom. We also have, I believe, a James Groy. I apologize if I say him incorrectly. Has his hand up in the Zoom, and also there should be one more person. Hold on one sec. Yeah, it's still already to the board. Sorry, Lisa. Listen, you guys, you gotta talk. Mr. Billy Tomber.
Okay, want to let the online people go first? You'd like to hear from me, Mr. Chairman?
They're sitting in easy chairs.
Sure.
With a cool beverage.
And we're here on this 39 degree Fahrenheit cloudy day, according to the bottom right-hand corner of the Zoom. Mr. Chairman and board, thank you for having me. My name is Billy Tomber. I live at 1322 Lamai. I also own 1318 Lamai, upon which is being built a garage structure, which you generous folks approved back in the fall. Happy to tell you that I waited to get all my permits before I started building. So that's not necessarily in theme with our previous presenters. I'm up here today to speak on behalf of the objectors of this, of which it is pretty much the entire contiguous neighbors around there. I'm the downhill neighbor to the north. You saw that on the elevation. We talked about that. Bob pointed it out on the thing. As you will see here, it's a double dead end lot. That is what is causing this whole unique situation here. All the neighbors from on 18th and 13th, and yes, in Soulard, we learned how to count. It goes 9, 10, Menard, 11, 12, 13, 18. Let the record show. So 13th to 18th. There is no 18th Street. There is no 2344 18th Street. It's a fictitious address. It would be as if 18th Street continued. In my notes here, a couple things. One of our gentleman who's prepared to speak, so I apologize. I didn't know he was going to speak tonight, but noted that this is putting a building plopped in a moat of concrete. That everyone has noted the lack of green space. But if you go to that slide, you can see it. Slide is it A 3.0? Or sorry, slide 4. But to replace 17,000 square feet of field and woods, it'll be replaced with an impermeable material. Where will that water go? I ask because perhaps to a downhill neighbor. That's A3. Will it be retaining walls to protect the neighbors and account for the 4-foot plus drop off from the lot to the alley and to the lands to the west and to the north, which is my backyard. We said the 1909 map shows the 5 houses in a 5 parcel lot. We like that. We don't like the look of this suburban residence inn. A single building plot with concrete surrounding it. I hope you don't take this as an example of NIMBY, just because it is in my backyard. But a good design with good density and good layout, I will be a total YIMBY on that. I wish for good development in my backyard. This is not that. I thank you very much.
Can we ask questions of him?
Sure. And I also have a list of 9 immediate neighbors that have signed on to this.
So. Question. Would you like what you would like? Big question.
Absolutely. I welcome.
I do think this is an odd site, and
yes,
this building is very cool, but is odd on the site. The first one they brought to you does seem like perhaps it's kind of an odd building that might be more appropriate on an odd site. So I'm curious if you were involved in the conversations back when the first iteration came, and if I don't want a property in our city that could generate 18 residents or 16 residents, or whatever many it was, to remain vacant forever. So I'm wondering if something more non-conventional seems like it would be more.
I love that you said could accommodate 16 residents. In 1909, it had 5 houses on this parcel, on this lot, the 5 parcels. So 5 houses, that's great. We love that. If that's what you're asking, that's what I would. If you're asking my opinion, that's what I would see, something like that, something closer to that, because it would allow for more green space. That proposal allowed for would eliminate all green space and made the alley, the thoroughfare, the to and the from. That was a non-starter for the neighbors, I can assure you.
Okay, that was the question. So when you purchased that house down the hill, did you purchase it with the expectation that that's just gonna stay green space? Did someone tell you that?
Oh, no.
Okay.
I welcome development. Sorry, it's in my letter. It probably should have been.
Okay.
I welcome
I'm
good
just
development, not this.
I'm just wondering, I guess I'm still confused why if this meets everything, and there's examples literally like a block over of the same exact type of building, and yes, I hate that it faces the highway, so show houses over there all the time that face highways, over in those neighborhoods, but people still buy them. I guess I don't understand, besides missing green space, wanting more green space, if this lot is a buildable lot, why would that be a reason if you knew in the future someone could build on it?
I'll be happy to answer the first, and then there's other neighbors who are about ready to speak, and those with more knowledge, including James, who's an architect who uttered that beautiful phrase about the moat, the concrete moat. In that particular case, 18th Street goes through. 18th Street is a one-way northbound street that turns onto Barton. No such street exists on the 2300 block. So does that make sense? So when you say style of houses, yes, but that style of house, the cars can drive in the front of the houses on 18th Street and then take a right to go east onto Barton. Because of the shape of this lot, it necessarily requires some sort of turnaround.
I guess I'm confused because the zoning approved this, and said it was fine. It just, to me, it sounds like a green space issue, or, preventing someone from building something like this because you don't want the trees. That is fine.
Well, but remember, I'm talking about runoff and
Yeah.
where's the water going? That's a serious concern. That's not about, I like to look at a tree and a blade of grass. I'm saying that I live 4.5 feet downhill from this project.
Yeah,
That is now going to displace all that
Yeah.
green, and now it's going to turn to concrete. Sorry, there's a lot more neighbors on, so I'm prepared to yield my time. Thank you. Thank you for time.
How do you want to do it? We have like several kind of different ways of doing this. How do you want to have them come in?
In the order that you like.
Okay, the first thing that came up was Steve Kotzine. Steve, you there?
Yes, I am here.
Yeah, go ahead. You can
All
speak.
right. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. And it's a little bit hard on the Zoom to hear the dialogue of the speakers in the room, but the last woman who was speaking asked Billy why he was opposed to the original structure. And I can lend a little bit of airtime to that because I also opposed the original structure. And because it was based on a model property that exists in the north end of Soulard, that would not have been historically relevant in this particular site. Based on that 1909 Sanborn map that you see, these were large single-family homes that were originally present on that map. And so the original design, which is basically to put a factory in your backyard, was not relevant to this particular site. And we also, I appreciate the thinking about it. An unusual site require an unusual design, but it came completely out of the blue. Or not out of the blue, but it just was not contextually relevant in any way, shape, or form. So this particular design, I think I want to applaud the developer for taking several cues at some of the public meetings that they had with the neighborhood for coming up with a design that would be a lot more contextually relevant for the space or for the lot. And I think they've done, this particular design has made an enormous improvement towards that. And I'm not going to speak about the architectural elements or anything to that effect, but what I am concerned about is the site elevation. And I know that the civil engineer is there, but I live just right around the corner. And if you were to go back to slide, I think it's 45. Yeah, let's see. Okay, so number one, is it our understanding that the building is going to be placed parallel to the alley, and that the angle that we see it on, where it is now parallel to the interstate on the left side, is going to be changed?
Can I answer that? One of
Yes.
one of two things will take place.
Okay.
Either the foundation will be poured to run parallel to Barton, and it will still have the angle that it keeps. It will still be the same angle, but the actual facade will face Barton directly, or they will rotate the building, depending on how they can deal their site. Either way,
Okay.
there will be a parallel facade on Barton adjacent property.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. So then if you can go forward, I believe it is to slide 52 and 51. Okay, this is great. So this is the elevation off of Barton, and you can see on the right-hand side down at 13th Street and the existing building that's there, that there's a climb uphill till you get to the alley. And this is probably the question for the site engineer. But there's and then this is probably more clearly demonstrated on the next slide. If you can go back to that, please. Okay, so to my recollection, and to maybe to Billy's as well, and maybe others who are neighbors, on the right-hand side, the existing building and the elevation of the existing building matches the street. And it's the same way on the left-hand side. The incline on this block as you go from right to left is nowhere near what's demonstrated in this example. And so the site plan, the way it's identified here is like, or the site plan that's identified when you go back to like slide 45. Okay, and I'm thank you for working with me through this whole thing. Those angled parking places there are like basically on a cliff. So my question is the developer planning to excavate this entire site in order to make the alley side elevation equal to that of the alley as it goes across? Because this, you know, the left hand, the north end where Billy Tomber's residence is at this end, and the left end where the proposed property is going to start at 2344 Barton is like the same right here, like this. It's not like this. And so that grade issue is something that I am not connecting to understanding that. And that is specifically the thing that the first thing that I am concerned about is how are they actually building on this particular site? Not only the angle of the buildings on the alley, as well as how are they handling the elevation? And then secondly is I understand that CRO and zoning have worked together to place the property further back on the site, but it would seem to me that if we placed the property closer to the alley, you could actually accommodate some of that green space issue, and then all of that parking can be on the Interstate 55 backside of the site. So three major things there. How do the buildings positioned? How is the site elevation working from north to south? And then the third thing is really, can you put it closer if the design is going to stick? And the 8 townhouses and the 16 units, is that can it be actually positioned closer to the alley to eliminate the parking on the alley side and put the parking on the back side? Does anyone have any questions? Because that was a lot of talking.
We've got other people in the waiting room. Who's next?
Lisa Aki.
Can James go before me?
Steve did, and Billy Tomber did.
Okay.
I said, can he go before you?
Yeah, can James go before me?
Sure. James, it's Shroy. I apologize.
Yeah, this is James Scroy. I live at 2215 Menard. I'm an architect and on the plan review board for Soulard. So I would first like to talk about how this is in conformance, but the neighborhood is in disapproval. We're not in disapproval of the design, or at least me personally, and I also don't want to speak for the board on this. This is my personal comments. So not in disapproval of the actual design. I think the design is great. The model example is great. I have an issue with where it is placed on the site. And it sounds like the developer has worked with CRO and zoning to place it specifically. But using the model examples, there is always a sidewalk or some kind of walk up or something separating the building from the public. And that doesn't exist here. There are going to be cars between the public and the building. Also, it's a little bit of an issue for me to place the main public facade on an alley where historically that hasn't happened unless it's specifically a carriage house. So really, our main issues is site placement. I would urge the developer to maybe go to like a L shape where Barton can still be used as a main facade as well as the alley and conceal all the parking, kind of echoing what Steve mentioned on the highway side. So hopefully that can address some things. And then I'm not sure what if the previous scheme was shown where it was, you know, previously referenced as a factory. I preferred that scheme over this one. It seemed to fit the site a little bit better, but that's also just my personal opinions. I think it could have been worked out with a little bit more massaging.
Lisa, you want to talk next?
Yeah. Hi, I want to thank the chairperson and the board and staff for allowing me to speak. I think pretty much Billy, Steve, and James all kind of covered what the neighborhood, why we are not in support of the project. I appreciate the developer listening to the neighborhood. They reduced the previous scheme from 23 units to 16 units, which was a good compromise for the neighborhood from the previous example. And I know that meets both met zoning. When I looked at this, as a member of the plan review team, I look at the proposal usually for my initial response and my thoughts, but then go back to the standards. And I understand Bob and I talked about this. I understand where they're coming from, that they say it meets the standards, but there is a street, Provencher, in Benton Park, which is the, if you drive by it on Lemp, it looks like an alley, but if you drive down that street, it actually is the alley for the properties on the north side that face Arsenal, but it's also the front door for the properties on the south side. And so they are built up to the street. So when I looked at this in regards to the standards, not knowing that cultural resources and zoning had required them to certain setbacks, those were not noted anywhere on the drawings. I looked at the alley as being, I know it's not really a primary or facade by definition, but I looked at that based on the design of the building as being a primary design or primary facade, and looking at that as being where the alignments and the setbacks and everything else would be. Similar to what James said, if you look at the model example, there's a sidewalk and there's the street. In which case then the parking would be in the rear, which they're putting a driveway that is sort of a continuation, but it's not a street, it is a driveway along the highway. That makes sense because parking is in the rear of the building. So in my mind, that's how I reviewed it, only to find out that the zoning and cultural resources zoning required certain setbacks. And the other thing I noticed immediately upon looking at the drawings, and it has been brought up, they are showing the elevation for Barton. They're showing the street at an angle to the alley, and then they show it flat. And the street itself is not flat. They may be where they're going to excavate and get the building to the level of the alley, but there is still an incline going west towards the highway, which is not shown. So it's a bit deceiving. There's at least 1 to 2 feet difference at the current alley to where the property is, but the street continues to slope upward towards the highway. When you go to the next elevation, which goes from Mr. Tomber's house to Barton, it's a little deceiving in that they're showing the tree and a long line next to the building, and I'm not exactly sure where the sidewalk comes in, but the alley at the right-hand side on the north side slopes up continuously to Lamai. So both of these are somewhat confusing to know exactly what's going to be there. What you're seeing on the elevation of the existing house on Lamai, those are actually, it shows the flat part at the alley, then you see a height increase and an angle. Those are actually retaining walls. And so you're not actually seeing the alley line at all. So I don't know if the developer's plan is to continue with a lot of concrete retaining walls to get that flat parking lot. But there is nowhere in Soulard that I can come up with maybe the exception of schools, and even there is green space, that are surrounded by parking lots. This is not a typical parcel. Even our large developments, the 1400 Russell, the Steelworks building, neither one are surrounded by concrete like this is. And I really can't think of any others. Even Soulard Market Loft Apartments, there's a large parking lot facing a side street, but the building faces the other street. So it's not on an alley, it's much different. So this parcel, this site is not your typical site. And even if it meets the description in writing in our standards and in zoning, it is not typical. And so the layout that they're showing seems inappropriate for a historic neighborhood. But I also think in the past, we've had conversations about buildings being built on the highway. There are a lot of us that live close to the highway. So yes, these people, this will also be, Soulard is a sought after neighborhood. There will be, I don't foresee them having any problem having people living there. But I do think that pushing it towards the alley and a little farther away from the highway puts the noise of the parking and the driving and everything on the highway side. So that's kind of it. I don't want to keep repeating what everyone said, but I think if we looked at this more as a Provencher where it's an alley that serves also as a street, or even looked at this as more of carriage house type situation, but nowhere in Soulard can you pave an entire backyard even. With paving, you would park right on the alley. So it just is not in keeping with the a typical site in Soulard. Thank you. And I'm happy to answer any questions as well.
Yes, you have Terry Hoffman.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. Thank you for giving all of the Soulard residents a chance to speak here today. My name's Terry Hoffman. I'm a long-term resident in Soulard. I'm also highly involved with several of the boards and commissions in the neighborhood. And like Lisa and Billy and Steve, live several blocks from the proposed development. And I'm not going to bother repeating a lot of what has already been said by everybody before me, but I just had a couple of comments. And first and foremost, am I the only one that thinks it's odd that the photographs for the model examples are of buildings that no longer exist? I mean, the one photograph is showing a Model T automobile in front of it. So how old is that photograph? That building is no longer there. The building at the corner of 7th and Cherokee, I think was the second one, that's no longer there. There are plenty of model examples here in Soulard that would more accurately, or maybe should more accurately guide the overall design of this particular parcel. Although I do have to echo Steve Katsinas's comments that this is a much better improvement from where we were before with 23 units on the site. But I still feel that despite the fact that zoning has approved it from a density standpoint, it's just still creating far too dense of a development in this part of the neighborhood where that kind of density has never existed. I mean, I guess this parcel is the combination of five parcels that were condensed into one. And, just by top of the line calculations, assuming that each of those parcels were roughly 25 feet wide, as most of them are in the neighborhood, you divide the width of that parcel by 8 units, that means each of these units is about 15 feet wide. That seems awfully narrow to me, but there's no dimensions, no specs in any of these drawings, so nobody can verify that. But that just, to me, seems overly dense and significantly out of context for, at least for this part of the neighborhood. And the previous comparisons of this particular row of townhouses to the row of townhouses 1 block south on 18th Street is not an accurate one, because that row of townhouses, they are wider than these are. At least they visually look wider. They are only 2-story townhouses with a dormer on the 3rd floor. So visually, they look much smaller than these, which have a full 3rd floor and a dormer. So, even contextually, when compared to townhouses literally a block and a half away, they are, in my opinion, significantly out of context. I also had significant concerns about the overall site plan, but I'm not going to reiterate what others have said before me. I do appreciate the fact that that this has not been an easy task for the developer and the architects to move forward with it, but I strongly encourage all of them to continue to work with not only zoning and cultural resources, and not just the SRG of the neighborhood, but also the residents who are most impacted or who will most be impacted by this particular project at the south end of Soulard. And thank you. And I'll entertain any questions if anybody has them.
No.
Thank you.
That's the preliminary review. At which, after reviewing the ordinance, listening to community concerns, listening to our staff, we offer recommendations and guidance to CRO how to proceed with the design. So this is a moment, and this is part of the discussion.
My motion for preservation board grant preliminary approval of the project with the condition that final drawing details exterior materials be reviewed.
So what we need to do now is to get some guidance to CRO, sorry, to the resources office. How we want to proceed with this. If the motion is approved, gives general approval to be one. Obviously, there are some things raised, but that we may. So, let's begin that discussion.
I mean, like this is such, I don't know why there's so much pushback. When the experts build these buildings, they know how to control water. New construction is not an abnormal situation. This checks every box. To me, this is just confusing, but that's my stance. I don't understand. It sounds like it's more of a green space issue to me than something's wrong with the building. That's my opinion.
I would point out that in previous discussions, we have tried to this often to listen to the community and to take the community's
No, I
feedback
don't want you, my confusion, the whole meeting has been, there's been discrepancies with the neighborhood versus what the bylaws or code says. To me, in my perspective, the neighborhood has not given me, and they've given other people on this board, but has not given me a good reason as to why this is an issue. It's not a bad material, it checks every box. It just, all I keep on hearing is green space, and you know this is an undeveloped area. At some point, it might or might not be developed. I'm not pointing at you, I'm pointing at the picture. Sorry. So that's just my perspective, my thought. It looks over the highway, that's been brought up. I could care less. For me, that would be really hard to sell as a realtor, so I wouldn't suggest that, but if that's what they want to risk their money on, that's on them. The alley access that the lady was speaking to in Benton Park, I know, or where this house is sit, that house is a hard resale, that's why it's been an Airbnb forever. So that's just my opinion. If they have worked out countlessly, as you said, Bob, with you and zoning, and you guys have come to this conclusion, and if they're not just trying to throw up something, I guess I'm confused.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think what I'm hearing from the feedback that we've gotten from the community is that a lot of them aren't opposed to the building that is part of the project. They're thinking that the project itself doesn't meet a model example throughout the neighborhood because other similar projects are not completely surrounded by concrete. And so this is just not it's not the building or materials itself, it's the scope of the project. And so I don't think it's necessarily a green space issue, so much as when I look at this aerial view, we see a lot of smaller parcels with, and even their historic pictures, we see, a lot of separation there in between the actual building and then the elements that surround it. And if we were to instead just put one, giant concrete pad down and set this building in the middle of it, I'm not sure that they're going to find a historical example of that. That's kind of the feedback that, as I understand it.
Yeah, I'm confused because we approved the one-story building that Anthony brought up in the same exact neighborhood, and we gave them a variance and that didn't check any of these boxes. And now we're bringing this example, it checks every box. And that was a unique lot, and we're saying this is a unique lot. It checks every box, but this is still not okay. To me, it's confusing.
Yeah, Lisa says she can't hear the board. Can you just clarify if you can hear the board?
Lisa, we're gonna do a quick mic check. Lisa, she can hear me just fine.
Lisa, it's getting better. It looks like people are talking into microphones or something. It's a little bit better, but if they can talk up, that's great.
Okay, thank you. So I do agree with staff's assessment that it complies with these various different components. And I do think the building looks like a building that fits in the community. I have a problem with the staff's assessment of the site. And I do think that the assessment of the site is a bit tricky because it is a difficult parcel. It is not, I'm not sure the historic examples of how the site was configured on the 1909 Sanborn are relevant because there was no interstate in 1909. So that does not, it's not particularly compelling to me as any kind of evidence. But I originally thought that this building was oriented in the opposite way and that the front facade faced what used to be 18th, that we were creating some kind of pedestrian only entrance. And I thought, it's a little weird to have a pedestrian only entrance and face the interstate, but I don't know, Soulard's popular. In which case behind the building, so to the east, would be simply parking for those buildings, which to me is consistent with the rest of Soulard, with parking in the rear with access off the alley and entrances at the front of the home. I do understand that it is unconventional to build a row house that only has pedestrian front entrances. We do have those in LaSalle Park. There is one street that is pedestrian only, so there is an example of that. I just do not think that the current site arrangement is consistent with the surrounding neighborhood. And I think that the building itself could be if oriented in a different way.
I agree with Commissioner Homaker. I just have the same problem with the site that you're saying it complies because the public facade is Bartlett Street, but the public facade then has no front door.
Right.
It's a sign. And so, that doesn't make sense. So what they're building is not a public, is not the front of the building along the public facade. Instead, the front of the building faces an alley. And so again, I don't think it complies with the site plan, the 301.1 site plan requirement, that it's not aligned, that it's public facade. And more so the model example is not facing an alley, the model example is facing a front street, right? So I don't think it complies with 301.1. That needs to be addressed.
And I just have a question about this comment, maybe you can answer. Is the zoning's approval related to setbacks also considering Barton the front?
I'm unsure which one. All I know is the placement meets zoning's requirements. If you move this thing anyway, it's going to probably require some kind of zoning variance. It's the placement of the building. I believe it's in relation to 18th Street being a street which no longer exists. So as situated, we just go back briefly. After the third time we saw this thing come through, I said, enough, let's sit down with the various people who have to look at the codes and say, this meets this. So we did. So we went zoning, this is what we came up with. This is the setbacks that work. That's it. I mean, forgive me, but I don't know if it says that you have to have an entrance off a public street in the ordinance. If I'm incorrect, please correct me. I don't think it says you have to have an entrance on there. Actually, the model example, which I show here for that side, does not have an entrance. If you look at the screen, that's a corner building. That's the basis for that example on that side. So I know what you're saying is the perceived elevation is the alley side, but by the code, that is not the public facade. It's a semi-public facade. Semi-public based on this
Right, I think
setbacks.
my concern is with the consistency of the neighborhood, and so
Mhm.
I am wondering if it is worth the applicant going back to zoning and reorienting the building so that they are using the 18th Street side, which is no longer a street, I get it, as the front of the building. And if they could get the variance for that, and therefore the setbacks being that be the front of the building, we would not have this difficult site issue we're having now. And I do get that this is a puzzle, that you are now working with multiple departments to try to fit theirs and then theirs and get the least amount of exceptions, and that is complicated. But this is a complicated site. And so when purchasing the site and combining 5 parcels, that was sort of part of the tricky game you signed up for.
But I guess I don't understand because they met with everybody they're supposed to, and to make this building work for the site this wasn't even the building that they said they wanted to do. So I guess I don't understand if Bob's saying this is it, this is what zoning said, this is aligned with the regulations, and we're saying, well, it's not good enough, but it has to align with zoning and cultural resources.
I think the problem is, in my opinion, that the regulations, as all regulations, are built based or are written based on the fact that we have to apply them to everywhere. That's why we have the system of granting exceptions for weird circumstances.
But this is not an exception. It checks every single box.
Well, because they made it check every single box. And so
Right, that's the point.
what the neighborhood is saying is, no, this is a different circumstance. And just as a professional urban planner, this does feel like a different circumstance to me. Truly, I like proposal number 1, because I do think this is a weird site that maybe deserves a weird property and not trying to wedge single family homes into a now interstate fronting site.
I've been murmuring that for the last 25 minutes.
Yes. Yeah,
But
I
the
don't.
other site didn't work for zoning in your office, right?
Which
Isn't that
proposal? I'm
right?
sorry,
They
which,
never
sorry,
came
which,
To us to ask for an exception, and they didn't go to zoning to ask for an exception. They tried to work it out in a way that would comply without an exception.
From a zoning standpoint, this is like probably the best example of when you should get a variance. It's a unique site that requires a variance for zoning.
I guess I don't understand what the issue is with the percentage work. Am I?
Is it you don't understand, you just don't.
I don't know. Okay, I'm gonna be quiet, but
No.
I literally don't understand this check. Every single box, the applicant worked apparently callously, as Bob said, with him and the other officers. They all sat down to make sure there was no confusion. And then everyone's saying this is not good enough. That's confusing.
That's why it's come to us.
Right.
And that's where we will offer our consensus, or at least majority.
So what's your
Oh, yeah.
It's ruminating.
So I'll jump right in.
He's been trying to.
Tiffany, you are absolutely correct.
Yeah.
It checks every box, and that's really all there is. We cannot. Let me back up. As chair of the Board of Adjustment, I can tell you that this is likely to be would. However, it checks every box, and they don't have to bring it to the board. I'm sorry. Good.
I can hear you just fine.
Okay.
It's
So,
coming through.
Again, it meets all of the requirements. As such, they do not have to adjust the site plan. They could, and again, this is a project that we would likely give a variance for, but they don't have to do that because it meets current requirements. And quite honestly, if I were designing this for time's sake, I would not take it before the Board of Adjustment. I can tell you that we are 60 to 90 days to looking at projects. No, it meets the requirements, so it's not necessary for them to change it. I think that this would be a better design if they did, but it's not required.
Also heard, that's part of this discussion, that it does not meet exactly the. So it does not have the applicable numbers in it.
You showed us
That-
that old one.
No, there is no requirement in the code that requires that the model example also meet a site requirement. Here's a model example of the type of building, and it meets that model example. And if the code wants to later talk about how model examples should, in addition to looking like something, that the site should also be that, which I think is crazy, because there are situations where we have odd shaped lots where that's not feasible. Personally, I think the first example, first design better fit this, and it could have been all concrete or asphalt, because then this looks more like a commercial warehouse building, but that wasn't acceptable. And so the appellant has come back with, sorry, the applicant has come back with a design that meets the code.
That's what I've said over the years. I don't, if someone comes and it checks all the boxes, they're following the rules, and we talk about, no, you didn't pull a perimeter, and these people are doing exactly what they're supposed to do, if not more, because they're meeting with all these departments at once, and we're still saying, that's just not good enough, even, because we don't like it. That's not what our job is. Does it meet all the boxes and criteria? Yes, so what's the discussion? Sorry, my New York energy for this weekend. But that's my, I just don't even understand why this is an argument. With everyone else, oh, it needs some window criteria, approved. It needs this criteria, approved. Wow, this meets all the criteria and we're having a 2-hour discussion about it.
Well, I respectfully disagree with staff that it needs. That point already that I don't applies with 301.1. I also think that model examples. Right, so I mean, there's a lot of things here, and then another one, mass, it says partial compliance. Well, partial compliance is not full compliance, so they haven't done everything. And again, I think the site is a big thing here. But I don't think they're meeting 301.1. You can disagree with that. I can.
We can have several projects in this specific neighborhood that we have approved that meets 0 boxes, and you think that 0 boxes, no model examples, and this is an issue. I have an issue with that.
Arbitrarily approved it. I do agree, and I've done a little sketch that allows for some green space between the parking. This will work based on the widths of the drive. But beyond that, I needs code. Sad.
Just want to put up detail. I don't believe that we arbitrarily.
Is there a discussion? Hearing none, there's a motion on the floor. As recommended. Commissioner Hamilton, you vote yes or no?
No.
Commissioner Hamilton, you vote yes or no?
Yes.
You vote yes or no? No. Commissioner Richardson, you vote yes or no?
No.
Commissioner Robinson, you vote yes or no?
Yes.
Chair also votes no. There are 4 noes, 2 yeses. The motion passes.
How do you agree? Yes, I think you do.
Commissioner Richardson, would you like to frame the motion?
Yeah, I move that the preservation board denied preliminary approval for the project because it does not meet the SULAR I just encourage staff to continue to work with the applicant to find a suitable design that complies with the code and the concern and puts the site back into use.
Hearing none, call the roll. Commissioner Hamilton, yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Hamilton? Alderman Ryan? Yes or no? Commissioner Richardson, yes or no?
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson, yes or no?
No.
Commissioner Hamilton, yes or no? Chair votes yes, 4 yeses, 1 no. The motion passes. Commissioners, I have a motion. Come on.
So moved.
Can I make a motion that Mr. Richardson does it?
No, I already have the motions on the floor.
There's a motion on the floor. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
He's leaving. Well, can we do yours? Let's do yours next. Can we? Let's do that. Sir, do you mind putting that?
This is what happened.
Sorry, can we, last minute change. We please hear this item last. Jan needs to get going. She has the next two items following this one. Is that okay if we hear these out of order? Is that a problem?
So we're gonna move Indiana Avenue to it last.
Yes.
Okay.
I have to get going because my dog is confined. I need to get home to let him out.
Great.
The applicants agree to do that, so.
Of Alderwoman Velasquez, I've been sitting on this call since for whenever this started. I'm here to just speak on behalf of the Mount Olive presentation, which I think.
That's the next item. That's the
Perfect.
next-
You.
Okay.
Respect your process.
Right, do we have to approve the change of agenda? No, thank you.
I appreciate this very much, and so does my dog. Okay, this is a preliminary review application for the rehabilitation of the Mount Olive Church in the Shaw Historic District. And this is the current condition of the church, unfortunately. It had a fire and it's been vandalized. The proposal is to convert it to a multifamily, number of apartments. And if I can forward this. That's not it. Bob, help me here. Okay.
Yeah.
That's not what I want.
What are you
I
wanting?
want Mount Olive, what was up there?
Okay, let's see
You're not gonna- I'll just- I know, it's right there. It was right there.
Which one? Oh, up and down.
Page down.
Okay. I apologize for that little
I think we do need to wait for
disruption.
a moment to wait for the alderman, because.
Okay. Okay. But this is a preliminary review, but it still requires a quorum.
That's what we're being told.
Yes.
As long as we don't make any motions or take a vote in his absence. She says, okay, let's do it.
Thank you. Okay. Again, as I was saying, this is a proposal to convert the Mount Olive Church in the Shaw District to apartments. Okay. This is the site. There is a large side yard. It's actually the original church building that received an addition to its east facade. And that's the addition on the left. Okay. This is the current condition of the building. It's been invaded by vagrants. The bell was actually stolen out of the tower, and you can see that it's been tagged with graffiti. So. I know. Okay, so this is the proposal. Now, your agenda says that there was going to be a rooftop addition. That has been withdrawn. So this only has one variance that it's asking for, and you can see that in the right side slide. They're going to add some additional entries to allow access to the apartments on the first story. And there'll also be an entry in through the basement for a second number of units. But otherwise, the church is being restored. Fenestration in the main part will be replicated. The one deviation from the standards is that the parking extends in front of the building line, which is not allowed under the Shaw Historic Standards. It has received support from the Alderwoman, from the neighborhood, the Shaw Neighborhood Improvement Association, and is also approved by zoning. So the only issue would be the historic district standards. And there'll also be, as I said, entrances on this western facade. What you see is the building as it's currently on the left. And then the proposal, the developer has worked with us and the staff to try to minimize the impact upon this facade, but we had to provide entrances. So the staff is recommending that the board grant preliminary approval subject to the usual conditions of the staff reviewing final plans, exterior colors and exterior materials. questions? This is a little context. Now, I should point out that there are evidence of other buildings on the block where parking is extending in front of the building. And this is one of them. This is directly opposite. That goes all the way out to the corner, to the sidewalk, which this is not proposed to be. There will be a landscape screen in front of it. And again, further east, the school has parking on both sides. So.
Questions for Jan?
Are they going to get start tax credits?
I don't believe so.
Great. We have a couple of people signed up to speak.
Uh-oh.
Ready for those? The applicant, yes, we should hear from the applicant first. Is the applicant present? Great.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Hey, thanks for having me speak. My name is Jesse Billu. I'm the owner of Mount Olive and also the applicant. I think Jan touched on most of the things that we plan to do with Mount Olive. She mentioned that that had a fire previously in July, so it's in pretty bad shape currently. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have. But I think the plans kind of speak for themselves for the most part. And yeah, just wondering any questions.
Do you need the other doors on the front facade for code purposes, like ingress and egress, or?
Yeah, so it's both actually. So the doors on, let me see if I can get back to it here. The doors on the west elevation. Where's the? So we'll go here. The doors on the west elevation are both for functionality of the current design of the units as well as egress requirements. The chapel itself isn't very wide the way that it sets. It's only, I think, 19 feet wide. So the plan is to add 3 units into the chapel and loft them. So really the new entrances are also for egress as well as helping with the design of the actual.
Those would be the main entrances of those units.
Yeah, so they'll essentially be kind of like townhouse units. There's a, I guess what's the best way to put it? There's in between the 2 structures, there's a courtyard. So on the other side of that will be the egress. Essentially the second egress is going to be the idea.
Great.
Okay.
Stephanie?
I'll be fast. So Stephanie Herbers, I am a Shaw resident, also on the executive committee for the Shaw Neighborhood Association. We did provide a letter of support for this. I queried board members as well as immediate neighbors and outlined the variances related to the historic guidelines as well as variances for zoning. And I did not hear significant concerns related to the historic guideline variances. So, building past the line for the parking spots, I think those are necessary. As well as the entrances. There's strong appreciation for overall preservation of the building and putting it to use for residential purposes. There's no interest to our knowledge of continuing use as a church or school. And so what CRO is currently recommending is what we would hope that you would be looking at favorably as well.
We do have the letter from the neighborhood association, and then we have one from the Alderwoman, who I think is on the line. If you have anything else to add?
I do. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
See me? So many screens looking at it. Hi, I'm Alderwoman Daniela Velasquez of the 6th Ward. This building is in the heart of the 6th Ward. I just want to thank you all for your time on this, as well as Jesse and Stephanie. wholeheartedly support this project. One of the things I do appreciate about the developer, you mentioned earlier, you asked if he was asking, well, let me back up. I appreciate that he has invested doubly in this project. He lives over on the other side of the park, and has really made every effort to work with the neighborhood and work with neighbors and really listen to them and get feedback and adjust what he's doing based on that feedback. And of course, Ms. Herbers has been right there with him, helping the process along. But I think that goes a long way to just show his commitment to both the historical standards and also the care of the neighborhood. And so with that, I don't have any hesitation. I know that somebody asked about historic tax credits. Obviously, Jesse can, or Mr. Bilodeau can break down the financials more than I can. But it's a great project that really aims to bring affordable housing and mixed use housing to the neighborhood, which we sorely need and residents want. And also, he's doing it without asking for any incentives or historic tax credits too. So it has my support. And if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Board? Okay, is there anyone else on the line that wanted to speak on this one?
I believe so, no. No.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I move that the Preservation Board grant preliminary approval to the project with additional that final drawings, details, and exterior materials and screenings for the parking area be reviewed and approved by the Cultural Resources Office. Second.
Any discussion?
Yes. So, I think this is a great example of where the building doesn't quite comply. One will not find an example of stairs on the west side anywhere in the Shaw neighborhood. Also, we have parking that is beyond the building. I will be in support of the project, but I want to note that there are items here that do not like it here. Very similar to, not similar to, quite different than the previous project in the same neighborhood.
Any other discussion? Okay, we have a motion and it's been seconded. Board Member Hamilton? Alderman Ryan?
Yes.
Board Member Richardson?
Yes.
Board Member Robinson?
Yes.
Myself, Conacher? Yes. We have 4 yeses and 1 abstention. The motion carries. Great, thank you. Item D.
I will if I can figure this out. Hang on. All right. This is a little bit unusual because it's a preliminary review request that we received actually from the Muni Theater in Forest Park. Our jurisdiction, however, is not in any historic way, but only as a park and a city-owned building. So this is a proposal to rehabilitate, I guess you could call it, the upper plaza of the Muni, and that's what you're seeing here in its current condition. There will be a new structure built that will include restrooms, ticket office, concessions, and the whole area will be landscaped, and it's a very beautiful project. So the staff is recommending that, I have to read this because it's complicated. The Preservation Board recommend to the Board of Public Service the approval of the permit for the proposed improvements pursuant to ordinance 64689, section 51, of the revised code of the city of St. Louis. And I will go briefly through. This is the area. And this is the proposed structure and other developments. And now we are looking northeast, and you see the new building there with the new fencing and other refinements. And this is a presentation I received from the Muni. And I'll just go through it briefly so you can get an idea of the quality of the design. And so it's a major improvement. And the staff has no criticism or suggestions. Now, Steve Smith from the Muni is here if you would like to ask him any questions. He's waited all this time.
Does anyone have questions or a motion on the table, perhaps?
I have a motion.
Great, let's hear it.
I move that we recommend to the Board of Public Service the approval of the permit, proposed improvements pursuant to ordinance 64689, section 51, as codified by at 24.24.010 of the revised code of the city of St. Louis.
Second, any discussion? Great. Call the roll. Hamilton.
Yes.
Orion.
Yep.
Richardson.
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
Amaker. Yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yeses. Motion carries. Great. Last item on the agenda.
You're almost there.
B, item B, 2839 Indiana.
Sorry, guys, give me one sec. It's really nothing at all, at least bit controversial or heavy. Okay, so preliminary review to demolish a single-family house at 2839 Indiana in Benton Park, and then to, if approved, construct a 2-story single-family house on the site. So I'm going to run through the slides, and then we'll kind of go through the ordinance really quick. The demolition aspect, and I'll run through the new construction just to work it all. I want you to have all the information before you make your decision about the demolition portion. Okay, here we go. 2839 Indiana. On the outside, it's a really old, really great building. It's a German Fachwerk building. For those who don't know, a German Fachwerk building is essentially it's a frame building, but in between the frame structure is brick infill. So it's a German construction method. What used to be, really prevalent in St. Louis, but over the years, it's a resource that's diminishing. So we have very few of these structures left in the city of St. Louis. It is a rare and precious resource. So we take this not lightly to lose the structure. So this is the building itself. Here is the location. We're just to the east of Jefferson. We are confident that this is the building on the Compton and Dry map. It's tucked in there. It fits contextually with the building that still exists on the street. There's retaining wall is in place. So we're pretty sure that this is the existing building back on the Compton and Dry. And also given the age of a Fachwerk building, that could date anywhere between the 1830s and up. So we're pretty sure this has been around quite some time. You'll see on the Sanborn map, there's one building. There is the frame building, which is the original front portion. And at some point in time, they did construct a rear 1-story brick addition. And you'll see those as I go through the rest of the PowerPoint. Contextually, this is looking north on the street. You can see the property at my left right here kind of sits forward on the lot. New construction next door, single story, and the rest of the block is a mix of 2-story. So it's definitely a hodgepodge of heights and on the block. And then if you look across the street, primarily 2-story and a couple of 1-stories mixed in. Looking south, again, you have the single-story new construction next door, and then primarily 2-story buildings on the rest of the block. Some more street level context kind of showing the oddity of how it sits in the parcel. And so I'm just going to just show you some stuff to kind of talk about condition issues. I did visit the site on a few occasions, and I've been inside the building. I want you just to note some stuff while I have it here. There is a pretty defined swale on the roof. So obviously there's some stuff going on there. This wall is heavily compromised. It's bowing in significantly. Actually, on the inside, it's being propped up by essentially just the old, sorry, what do you call it?
Living room panel.
The paneling, thank you, paneling. The old paneling, like in the 70s, is holding that wall in place with a 2x4 at the base. So you walk in, there's a massive bow. So I can't confirm, and that'll be part of this, that this wall is heavily compromised along with that. But the rest of the frame structure appears to be sound. This is the other side. You can kind of see a little bit the bowing of that wall on that one side. This is the rear brick portion. It actually has a lot more evident damage. The foundation is split in a few spots, and there is a noticeable shift on both sides of that rear elevation or facade, kind of going other side. So there is a foundation issue on that back brick portion, most evident just on the back. The other sides appear to be okay, just from visual inspections, and definitely would meet our definition of what is sound under the ordinance, which would stand for at least 6 months. This is a good shot showing where the brick next to the old building, and you can see the brick fachwerk inside, which is kind of cool. So in each shot, you can actually see how this is constructed. You see that you actually old lap siding on there as well. These are condition photos supplied by the applicant. You also received those as part of your email submittal when this came out. I will let her discuss this a little further, but my observations in the basement, I'm not an engineer. It appeared okay to me, but again, I'm not an engineer. She will discuss about how she believes that the foundation is sitting on just the earth. So I will let her delve into that more. But again, I reiterate, for our ordinance, it is sound. Okay, so that's the existing building itself. Precious historic resource, has some condition issues. This is the proposed new construction. This is the model example, and this is the proposal. So again, it does not need to be replicated. It's just based on. So we feel that is an appropriate model example for the new construction. I'm just going to show some reference details that will appear in the new construction. This is the streetscape, showing it in context with the neighboring property. There is a step down there, so that is an accurate depiction of the site. There is a drop off, and then there's the new construction next door, which sits really low. And that was approved back in, I think, like 15 or 16 by you guys. But you see the site plan on the right, that is also meets the standards for the new construction aspect of it. The block asset itself is varied in terms of setback. There is no one consistent setback line, so its setback is appropriate for the new construction aspect of it. The south elevation will be visible over the 1-story, so they're going to do all brick on the south elevation. And then the rear and north side would be a compliant 4-inch siding. Sorry, some people coming in. So back to the picture of the construction as well as the historic house. Just going through quickly the demolition criteria. There isn't a current plan for redevelopment, so that's not applicable. Architectural quality, we think this is a high merit structure. It's listed obviously being a fachwerk building. It's a rare property type. We think it's a high merit structure and extremely important. Conditionally, overall, we do believe that it meets the soundness of our ordinance. It will stand for 6 months. So that aspect is, we acknowledge again, there is some certain damage to the property. Neighborhood potential, it's the block is great. It's all occupied building. So obviously they're going to propose to build a new house. So that's okay. Reuse potential, there's a submitted write-up for the rehab cost from the applicant. The rehabber is the person who would do the new construction as well. So there is a submission with your packet. showing the cost to rehab the property. I believe it's in the range of $300,000 to get this property back up into shape for that size of the building. That is the program he worked up for that. The block face would be impacted by the loss of the building, but there is proposed infill, so it meets that portion. Applicant owns the property. It's trying to skip some stuff that's not really relevant. The one thing is, would the new construction equal or exceed what we're losing? Staff believes it would not. This is such a rare building. We appreciate the hard efforts by the designer to make a nice looking building, but losing this building would be a big loss. So we do not believe that what is proposed would equal the loss of this building. Complies, it does meet zoning requirements for the site. Also, the work will begin within 12 months. That complies. So beyond that aspect, staff is recommending that you do not approve the demolition. That being said, there's two motions within the application, or the proposal extension. If you do choose to grant approval, we do recommend approval of the new construction, subject to usual stuff that CRO will work with the owner on final details and materials. You have a letter from Benton Park. Benton Park is being non-committal in regards to the demolition. I understand why. We don't see this very often. I explained to the applicant, we rarely see demo new construction in the local historic districts. This is a very rare thing we see. So the neighborhood is not going to comment on the demolition part, and they do support the new construction. They do have some tweaks they'd like to see for the design, and the applicant is open to the tweaks that is brought by the neighborhood. So any questions for me?
It's your opinion that you would not recommend you go down that.
We just can't. The building, it just, yeah, I mean, and I get why they want to do it, but it's for us to recommend approval for this would be just, we can't, it's a bridge too far.
Great. Any other questions?
Yeah.
for,
So I had one. You said, how big is the existing?
700 square feet, 700 square feet ish.
So
Sorry.
D neighborhood effect and use potential. Two, the one story on the site could be real sufficient monetary investment.
Absolutely.
So 700 feet, 700 square feet, and it was $312,000. She tried to get tax credits. I came up with maybe she gets 70, 65. So does that make, in your experience, does that make economic sense?
Generally, we don't weigh that. I appreciate that it's in the ordinance. I truly appreciate that fact that's in the ordinance, and maybe we are supposed to take some count when it's here. Rather, you're asking me if I think as a personal opinion, if it makes sense financially, probably not. But I don't believe that that's, why we're saying that it should not be demolished.
I thought we were looking at high merit in previous
Yes.
situations. We made people keep buildings that were 5 times the amount with no return that were living. So that's just my comment.
I agree with Commissioner Hamilton here. I think if the preservation board starts saying we don't care about high merit buildings because it's expensive to maintain them, but I'm not sure why we're all part of it here.
Any questions for Bob? Okay, let's hear from the applicant.
Hi, my name is Melinda Stewart. I'm a rehab consultant that was called in on this project for the client. I've been rehab consulting for 23 years, basically historic consulting with some other stuff added on. He originally called me because he wanted to put an addition on the top of this and in the back. And I'm like, well, we got to figure out if we've got the structure to do that first. So when I went out to the project on that first photo on the first page. When I went out there, the first wall I saw was the north wall. Bob had pointed in the big swell in the front, in the fachwerk part. But if you look at this picture, the brick wall in the back has an 18-inch bow in it as well. The foundation back there has gone bad too. Then, and on the fachwerk part, that lower picture is right at the sidewalk, because I have a 0 lot line, and so the neighbor's sidewalk goes right up to the property. But if you look at it, you don't have a foundation there. The fachwerk is there, the brick is there, but no foundation. So then I went around to the back, and I have a bunch of stress cracks in the back. I have a bunch of bowing on the sides. The parapet walls are bowing. So if you look at the foundation is actually going down on both sides in that picture on page 2 on the back. So I've got a bad foundation there. That's affected both side walls as well, on the brick section. So then I'm like, okay, let's go down and look at the foundation. So went down to the basement. That's the next page. The basement is actually a dugout. It originally probably did not have a basement, so it was dug out later. It's got bulkheads holding dirt back on each side. But if you actually look up at the joists are sitting on dirt. I can't see a foundation on the fachwerk part. I don't know that it has a foundation, because it looks like on all of its sides, the joists are sitting on dirt. And then the back section has some sections of the joists that are sitting on dirt. I think there might be some kind of crawl space, but not much back there. The interior is definitely affected by all of these structural things where it's going up and down on the floor. So basically, to retain and restore this building, you'd have to put in a foundation. But the minute I touch anything in that building, those very fragile fachwerk walls are going to fall. He wasn't exaggerating when he said the living room paneling is holding the wall in place at this point. I almost made the mistake of pulling it off, see what was behind it. And I was like, oh, wait, there's a wall there. So we would have to rebuild at least all of the north side. We'd have to rebuild the brick and the foundation on the rear, and then we'd have to rebuild about half of the brick wall on the south side as well. Once you start pouring new foundations and you start rebuilding all the walls, that's actually building new construction to look old, that's not preserving, and we wouldn't be able to do tax credits with that. There would be too much loss of contributing material there. But then at the end of the day, once you've done all that, once you've poured a new foundation and you've built all these new walls, you still have a 3-room house. That nobody's buying 3-room houses anymore. So saving this structure, well, that would be an awesome thing to do. And I kind of have a reputation for saving falling in things. I'm working on Carpelli's manuscript library right now. This building, I don't know how you could do it without tearing it all down to put in those foundations. I am representing the applicant. Yeah.
Was their intention always to tear this house down?
No, like I said, they had originally called me to put an addition on the top and in the back, and I'm like, we need to check the structures. So I went out there and I called them and I'm like, have you lost your mind?
Yeah.
You know, this is actually my first demo permit after 23 years in the business. I'm like, I just am not seeing it.
Yeah. I guess the rest are comments. It looks like they just purchased this last year.
Yes.
Or they were intent to resell, flip and resell.
They were gonna do something, rehab it, something, and then resell it. Yes. And the last project that I did with this particular client, we had a 2-story down on Holly Hills. They had all bad sills, and so we had to totally support the entire building and put in new sill plates down in the basement. But this one, the minute we go to support anything and start moving it, it's gonna fall in like toothpicks.
It sounds like they didn't do this.
I'm not gonna say anything about my client. He saw a building that needed something and knew, you know, he's done new construction, he's done rehabs, he does beautiful work. He's done both. He figured whatever happens, he can handle it.
Any other questions for the applicant?
He's actually, the owner is actually on Zoom too. I'm Melinda.
I did neglect to mention, you do also have in your packet a letter from the engineer stating its soundness from the applicant. So I apologize that that was also included as part of your packet. So I assume unsound.
No, so it's unsafe.
There you go. Thank you very much.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Yes, I move that the Preservation Board. Preliminary approval of demolition of existing does not meet the standard of the Beckett Park Local Historic District Ordinance, specifically that no redevelopment plan. It's a high merit structure, and sound high merit structures shall not be approved by the office and other standards.
Got a motion, we got a second, any discussion?
Yes, I disagree with that motion. I think this is probably a great. There's what? That's the. So. Yeah, start now. And so where we end up here. Take this built completely down. To rebuild. All the way down. For the new foundation. Putting this new foundation. And then rebuild this building. There is nothing here that's salvageable. And so at the point that you're doing that, a replica of this building, that makes absolutely no sense.
Which is fine, we respectfully disagree, but if they're saying it's a high merit building, there is a way to secure this building. The Boeing, not ideal, you probably have to relay that brick.
There is no way to secure a foundation wall. Cannot.
So what was the $312,000 bid for?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just
Sorry.
seen what the
I apologize.
$312,000 was gonna do.
You want to
It has nothing to do with it.
That was gonna,
Pour a new foundation, do a new walls, new
Yeah.
electrical, new
So
plumbing.
your
new-
testimony is it can be fixed. It's just expensive.
It can be fixed by tearing it down and rebuilding.
By tearing it down and rebuilding it. That's what has to happen with no foundation.
And I also, oh, sorry. Tim from Benton Park, I had him do a walkthrough as well, because I was like, you can't give an opinion on this building unless you walk through it to really see it. Unless you really see it. So he did walk through it. And at the end of the day, he said, well, in my position with Benton Park, there's no way that I can, support a demo, but I'm not going to oppose it. And you'll see in his letter, he did not oppose demolition. Just anybody in his position can't support it. It'd be on the news. But he could see it firsthand. as well.
Discussion? Table? Second?
So, you guys, you brought in people to look at the,
Uh-huh.
can't imagine the house was built, it's standing there forever, and then we're like, it has to be demolished. There's no way to stabilize this?
There is no foundation wall. The start of the building needs to have foundation wall. So in order to achieve that, you have to take the building down, put in foundation walls. You have to demolish the building to then put in new foundation walls to then build this building.
Is
back
there
up.
someone that could testify to that? I understand you're the architect, I know you built new construction, I know that.
That's kind of why we had the engineer out there and why he wrote that letter. You know, how do we save this building if we need to save it? Can we save this? Tell us how to save this. Because typically on a frame house, you would put beams underneath. You would put holes in the exterior walls and put a huge beam front to back, huge beam front to back, you know. But the problem is these walls, they're FOC work. So the studs are anywhere from 12 inches to 24 inches apart and not necessarily consistent, like drunk carpenters. And then they came in and they just stuck brick in there. Sometimes there's mortar on that brick, sometimes not. But after all these years, that mortar has disintegrated a long time ago. So the minute we put that beam on there and start stressing those walls, they're gonna fall in. Even if I took the living room paneling, one section of the living room paneling down, it's on a support wall, it would fall, and then the roof would fall.
Do you know if the person that owned this property had an inspection when they bought it to investigate the condition of the property?
The person who bought, who's the owner now?
Right.
No, basically because he was like, well, no matter what, I mean, it's a good location, no matter what I need to do to this building. And he has told me over and over, well, if we, you know, whatever they decide, if we need to fix it or not. My issue is we can't fix it. You know, there is no, unless we rebuild it, unless we totally rebuild it. Because even temporary shoring on that to be able to address and pour in new foundations, those walls are gonna fall. They're already falling.
Discussion?
The other thing Bob had mentioned is if we do get a demo permit, buildings like this that have outlived their lives, we would be expected to fully document all of the construction and the materials as we do the demo, like do it piece by piece. So we at least have them documented.
Motion on the floor, so seconded. Take a vote.
Yes.
Richardson.
Yes.
Robinson.
No.
Conacher, yes. 4 yeses, 1 no, the motion carries. That's it.
Second.
Voice vote, yes, all in favor of adjourning.
Tell Sam maybe he's trying to talk here.
You've done it.
Let Sam know he's trying to talk. He's done. Say it's, they've already voted
Well,
against.
yeah, you wanted to stop.
You would have done,
Wouldn't
you did
matter.
a better, okay, you did a better job. with the-
Oh, yeah, I did such a great job.
You can go, it's fine. You're wrong.
What?
You're wrong.
On your site?
Yes.
Oh, I'm right.
You're 100% wrong.
That's like, so you really can just, you're gonna let just everyone pave over everything?
Let me rephrase that. It's your point by point part. Said like the one building thing, what it says is a single building style.
I pulled that one up.
Let's go. Where?
Yeah. I'm gonna call you tomorrow.
Let's see it. We're gonna stop the, what do I do here? I gotta stop recording. Stop.
You did the one that was in the last.